After my second year in college, I booked an Airbnb for a close friend and me that we had been eyeing for a while. It was an off-grid yurt, not a typical stay for me by any means. The yurt was situated on a dirt road, 10 minutes from the main road. To get there, it was less of an address and more of a turn right at the two tires stacked. Continue for a mile, go north at the fork type situation. The first night was great. The next day we explored around town, then returned to our yurt to hang out. I didn't see any neighbors, only homes in the far-off distance. So, given the heat, I felt comfortable wandering topless around our yurt. When night came, I slept naked. We heard what we assumed to be a distant party early in the night. Loud music was traveling from far away. Sometime along the night the music stopped and I fell asleep. A while later, my friend, who was still awake, heard two men's voices speaking in close proximity to each other. The voices started to get closer and closer until one began shushing the other and they started talking in whispers. Suddenly, they stopped talking altogether and walked directly up to our yurt, shining a flashlight against the walls. All our belongings were inside, but my car and our shoes were very obviously two women's. They were directly outside the yurt. They then turned the flashlight off. Until this point, I had been asleep, but awake to what, in my mind, sounded like a stampeding herd of animals growing closer. I remember being in a half-dream, half-awake state where I genuinely thought that there was a galloping animal charging our yurt. What my friend later shared with me was that she was pinching me as hard as she could, and that's how I finally woke up. I never felt the pinch, though. I remember gasping as I opened my eyes. For some reason, as I was laying on my back in bed, my friend was lying on her side facing me. She immediately brought her finger to her mouth to shush me. I was now fully awake, but frozen because I had no idea what was going on. We couldn't talk because the desert air carried every sound, every creak of the bed, and I was trying hard to breathe calmly. Since I was on my back, it was difficult to face her without making a sound, so I had my head slightly turned to see what she was whispering. Every minute, the wind would pick up, and all we could hear was the breeze. The next minute, complete silence, except for their footsteps in the dirt slowly walking around us. At one point, they stomped loudly all around our yurt, and I realized that must have been what I thought was stampeding animals. It got silent again, and just when we thought they must have left, we heard the famous sound of footsteps encircling us. I'm a very shy, timid person, but my fight or flight kicked in as wanting to scream as loudly and as deeply as I could. What the F do you think you're doing? And then yell and fight and kick. My friend was the opposite and told me we needed to be absolutely silent. We were communicating on our notes app with the brightness turned all the way down, when it had been what felt like an eternity. I hated myself for not wearing pajamas, for not having all my self-protection tools under my pillow and instead in my bag on the floor. I remember completely accepting that I may get stabbed. I thought about what it would be like for my family to find out that I'm dead, and how sorry I felt to not explain. I remember in the middle of this eternal frozen state, I heard the zipper on the yurt rattling. For the first time, my friend and I broke the silence and yelled now, as if to cue me, leaping to my bag of self-defense items by the door, pull my alarm, turn on my taser, and yell that 911 was on their way as my friend dialed them on speaker. I remember making ourselves as loud as we possibly could. I remember the distant siren approaching, getting closer and closer, and I remember packing up my belongings quicker than I have ever packed in my entire life. When a police officer arrived, he waited as we packed up our bags into the car. He said we shouldn't be staying so far from the main road, and we just agreed it was supposed to be a fun Airbnb, and yet it turned into anything but. As we were about to pack up our last thing, my friend noticed large footprints in the otherwise perfect sand around our tent. They were inches from the tent. Neither of us had walked up that close, because to get that close, you had to step over a circle of rocks decorating the border of our yurt. We only entered through the front door zipper, where the rocks ended. The officer didn't believe it wasn't ours, despite the significantly larger footprints. He said he had been patrolling the area with police dogs, and that must have been what we heard. I hate that I second-guessed myself for the rest of the night, thinking we may have just scared ourselves over nothing. High on adrenaline, we made the drive home non-stop. We slept together at my house. I was shaking for the rest of the night, and we both slept with stuffed animals, which at our age was very much out of the norm. In the morning, I walked her out to her car to say goodbye, but I froze when I got to my own car because covering every inch were the largest. meatiest handprints, and brown dirt. I consider my brother to be a big guy, and even his hands were smaller than the handprints on my car. I was so angry that the police officer didn't see that, but I was also glad that I had proof that someone else was there that night. I took so many pictures because I never wanted to forget the image of so many handprints as evidence. The most unsettling part was that my friend shared with me there had been many recent unsolved murders in Wonder Valley within the year before. That happened to be where we were visiting. When she got home, she researched to ease her mind what the area was like and found several articles of missing people minutes from our site. I recognized every road the articles mentioned as roads leading to our yurt. I realize you may be thinking nothing horrendous happened to us, but I've never felt that deep in my gut subconscious, complete acceptance that I may end up dead as I did that night. It was an absolute gut feeling, and I don't know how else to describe it. I'm glad we made our way out of there. I hate that everyone we spoke to that night didn't believe us.